Drake, you ready to do an alignment? Huh? You ready to do an alignment? Those are fun. So in alignment on this, it's really not as complicated as people think. And we can do a basic alignment here. So what we're going to do is just toe. We're only gonna mess with the toe. We're not gonna do caster. We're not gonna do camber. We're just gonna do toe. You can do caster and camber in a garage, but it requires a whole lot more setup. It requires levels and about 8 plumb bobs, but it is possible, but we're not gonna mess with that right now. So the alignment we're gonna do is we are simply going to align the front wheels to the rear axle. So when you do this, you don't really worry about the body. Well, you do, but all we want to do is take those front wheels and make sure they are parallel to the rear axle. The rear axle should be parallel to your frame rails. This whole video is assuming that your rear axle is parallel to your frame rails and you just need to straighten up the way your wheels are turned. So with my car, I know that the rear axle is parallel with the frame rails because Drag, you're really in the way. I'm trying to do something here, Drag. Can you go lay down or something? No? Okay, we're gonna play for a minute and then okay, so we are assuming that our rear axle is square with our rear frame rails. In my case, I know it is because I put in welded subframe connectors in this, which means that I had to hang a whole lot of plumb bobs from this thing and make sure everything was square before I welded those in to connect to the subframe. So I know everything is set up in my case, Drag. Come on. All right, so what we need to do is get the rear axle on jack stands. And you want to make sure you have 2 identical jack stands so everything is somewhat square. And then for the front, what I have done is I tightened up 2 open-ended lug nuts and tightened them against the rotor. And then I set the rotor down on a piece of steel, which is setting on a piece of a 4x4 and a 2x4 or a 2x4x6 or whatever it is. I have one of these on this side, that same combination, and the same on this side. So why I did it like this, you could actually leave the tire on and let the tire sit on the ground, but then you have a lot of resistance from the rubber on the concrete, whereas now the resistance is only the rotor on that piece of steel, and it'll turn real easy if you need it to. And you also, once you have it all set up like that, you want to do some of that, you know, make sure your suspension is all settled out before you start messing with anything. And after you get that all done, you want to, let me get some light here. After you got everything on jack stands and setting on this, you want to break your adjusters free. Now I have this style of adjuster. If you have the old, oh, what do you call it? It's like a little, kind of like a clamp that goes on there. If you got that, well, that I would change to this. Now for tools, you're gonna want 4 plumb bobs. This is a laser. We're gonna use that. Tape measure and some masking tape, and then this is just a piece of steel. I bought a 4-foot piece of steel. I cut it in half. I stacked them on each other. I drilled a hole through it, painted them white. So we're gonna need those for tools. The rear axle, this is where we're gonna get our main reference. So we have the rotor tightened down so that can't turn or anything. And then we put one of our pieces of steel on there, put a washer on there, and tighten the lug nut against it. Now, what we have is a flat plane against the rear axle. So the rear axle is straight, and now we have this flat plane to work off of. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 2 plumb bobs and we're going to hang them off the face of that flat plane. So I'm going to set that up. And here is our setup. So I've got a plumb bob hanging off there and there, set right at 12 inches. So this is exactly 12 inches from here to that flat plane. And I hope this makes sense. It'll, if you keep watching, it's gonna make a lot more sense. So now we wanna take a piece of masking tape and go from here to here. And pretty much what we're doing is we're taking that flat plane right there and transferring it to right here. This will be our reference. And I will show you what this all means in a second. Okay, so this piece of tape here, this line is parallel with our rear axle. So I'm gonna use the laser beam. I'm gonna hug this side of the tape. I'm gonna shoot the line all the way up there. I'm gonna put another piece of tape up there. I'm gonna turn off the lights so I can align this better and see everything. So here is my parallel. So now I need to hang plumb bobs from here and there. Same on the other side, so I'm gonna get that set up. How's that look? So hopefully the concept is coming through. That line is parallel to the rear axle. This line is parallel to that line, which is parallel to the rear axle. Now we need to make this plane right here parallel to this line. Same for the other side. We need to make this plane parallel to that line that's on the other side. And also what you want to do is get your steering wheel centered up where you want it. We may have to come back and jiggle that and make sure it stays where it is, because sometimes when you're adjusting those sleeves, it tends to move a little bit. That'll be just part of the process. Well, this is starting to look a little bit nuts, isn't it? But it all makes sense if you really look at the numbers. So what we're trying to do is make this plane match this plane. And we're trying to make this plane match the other plane. So I've taped the tape measure down just so it doesn't move at all. And we are going to try to square up this with our numbers here. So this side, I've already got it pretty good. Right now, you know, ignore all these numbers. You gotta just figure out that this is, you know, 1 foot to there. So right now, it's at 11 5/8 on this side. And this side is also at 11 5/8. So this side is set. Now we got to work on the other side. Okay. So let's go from the 9 here. So it looks like it's right at 2 1/8. So other side from the 9 looks like about 2 1/2. So we need to adjust this that way. Now luckily my adjusters, I can do them by hand, which makes it a whole lot easier for me. Wrong way. Okay. I think we need 2 1/4. You kind of got to eyeball it a little bit, but then, you know, you got to just lay down and look at it sometimes. It's a little bit less than 2 1/4. Try, get out of here. I'm trying to work. So this is at about 2 3/8. Turn it a little more. right way? No. It's kind of tough to get these to stop moving too. It's at 2.5. 2.25. I think we need 2 3/8. Two 3/8. Okay, but now we gotta go check the other side again. Make sure it didn't move. Let's go off the 73 there. It's right at a 1/2 inch. That's right at a 1/2 inch. Okay, so it is set, but let's check our steering wheel. Looks okay, doesn't it? Oh, not quite. Now let's check everything again. Yep, that's a little more. All right, I am going to finally adjust this and then I will come back. Here we are. So this is at 73.5, 73.5. We're still locked in at 7 foot here. And over here, we're at 11 3/8. 11 3/8. And we are happy with the steering wheel. So now we can tighten up our jam nuts and put the wheels back on. All right, we are done. It's all aligned. Now, is this the world's best alignment? No, not at all. But you know what? When a car is aligned, it's aligned to the rack that it's on. And the world is dynamic. The world's full of bumps, potholes. Here in Illinois, we even have jumps in the roads. So every time you hit anything, when you accelerate, when you hit the brakes, everything changes. When you accelerate, your front end lifts up. When you hit the brakes, the front end goes down. And your front wheels are on a pivot. You have an upper A arm that's attached here, lower arm that's attached here, your wheel's over here. So every time you hit bumps, your wheel goes like this, kind of at an arc. And that's more extreme than it really does, but that's kind of the way it works because of where they move. So you can't really align a car perfectly and have it be perfect going down the road. It just doesn't work that way. But for me, this will work out just fine. I've aligned cars and trucks like this for many years and don't really have too many issues with it. And if you go into like a big rig shop where they do tires and alignments on big trucks, they don't usually use lasers. They kind of do it the same way. Except for they'll have spots where they pull up and they have lazy Susans on the ground. They use degree wheels and they do it kind of in a similar way to this, but maybe not even as good. So it's still a common way to align things, and for me it works out. So now if I can just get a license plate, I could go test it out, but I don't know when that's gonna come. But that's it. That is the alignment video.